Hi, this is Leora Lanz, and you're listening to Marketing Mindset Lessons from Hospitality, the podcast where I speak with some of my amazing friends throughout the global landscape of hospitality and marketing. We will share best practices that you can use in your business, whether it's in traditional hospitality or not, whether you are an emerging leader in the industry, or seasoned and wanting to stay fresh and always learning. If you're an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur, you need a marketing mindset. Whether you're marketing a business or yourself, we all need a marketing mindset. We know you're busy, but take a listen and figure out how you can apply this fresh thinking to your world, both professional and personal. Let's all think like a marketer. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another conversation on the Marketing Mindset Podcast. I'm Leora Lanz, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this conversation. Marketing Mindset is named after the books by the same name that I authored in 2025 and 2026, because everyone should have a marketing mindset and every business should have hospitality. So we'll get more into this. Today's conversation, it's everybody's conversation. It's about AI. And no one better to have this conversation with than who I call my AI spirit guru, Michael Goldrich. Let me share a little bit about Michael, and then we're going to bring him in to talk about hospitality, AI, and where's this going. Michael Goldrich is the founder of Vivander Advisors, where he helps hospitality organizations build their AI literacy. He redesigns workflows. He prepares these companies for their operational and commercial impact now in the world of generative AI. With a background in digital marketing and hospitality, just like me, which is why we have a lot in common, he works with hotel leaders on practical AI adoption across marketing, sales, revenue management, talent development, and organizational change. A growing part of his work is helping hotels think about their visibility in this world of AI, their digital presence, their digital visibility, including how to ensure their properties appear when travelers search through traditional channels, and how they remain discoverable as AI assistants and agents increasingly shape travel discovery and booking behavior. That's a lot of vocabulary. We're going to break this down. Basically, how can we ensure that our hospitality business is visible in this world of AI and AI search? It is my pleasure to bring in my friend, Michael Goldrich. That's a
Hello.
mouthful. Hi, Michael.
Hi, how are you? Oh,
I'm doing
that was
great.
great. That was
That's
great. Great
you.
introduction.
Well, that was you. That's what you do. And it's been
Yeah.
fun for me. And I can't wait to learn more from you, because I always learn when we talk. And I also teach the digital marketing class at BU School of Hospitality. And this is my first academic year of teaching and introducing the new terms of not just SEO, but GEO, AEO, and how everything needs to be designed these days for key phrases, not just key words, so that we come out in Gen AI output. So I'm understanding this, but we have to make sure people who watch this and listen to this conversation understand what we're talking about. And for those who are watching and listening, when I say Michael's my AI spirit guru, which I know he's heard me call him that before, I mean it, because for the last 3 or so years, when we met at a hospitality sales and marketing association event, first in New York, and then we met at another event in DC, and we've been in touch ever since. This man gives me tiny little tips that make great impact and are proving really efficient. And I've had you come into my classes. I've had you teach me to teach my classes. You are my mentor when it comes to this
Mm,
stuff. So thank you
You're
in advance.
very, very kind.
No,
I
you're
think
very, very
you
smart.
oh,
I'd like to surround myself with smart people, and you are one of them. So thank you.
oh, sure. Thank you.
Um, so let's get right to this, because we're
Let's
talking with some
cut to the
buzzwords.
chase.
Yeah,
Yes.
let's get
Cut
to
to the
it.
chase.
I want to make sure people understand what we're even talking about. So AI literacy. Prompting. The word prompt is essentially what we're typing into the search of an LLM, a large language model, whether it's Chat, Gemini, Claude. That's the prompt, the clue that we're giving it. What does AI literacy mean for hotels, for hospitality, in addition to the prompts? How do you define it, Michael? Where do you take
Oh,
ourselves?
so for me, illiteracy it's about understanding what the technology is, how it should be used, how it shouldn't be used. And then it's not just that, it's also the mindset. So I can come here and I could tell you like 60 things. And he was like, this is absolutely amazing and so interesting. I learned it. But then if you don't do it, it just goes away. And so to this point, and I just, I discovered this because I actually went to a hotel management company. They brought me out there. I was there for 3 hours. And this was 2 years ago. I told them, this is what this technology is. This is what it can do, blah, 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 blah. And they went back the following year and nothing.
Nothing happened.
They nothing happened. They said, this is absolutely amazing. Everyone felt like mind blown. They didn't know it could do that, but nothing changed. But the second time I went back, everything changed. And the reason why everything changed the second time is I call it the 4 T's. You need for AI literacy, AI adoption to be successful in an organization, you need the 4 T's. And this organization adopted those 4 T's. So what are the 4 T's? Number one, and I will say probably the most important one, is tone from the top. It has to be the CEO. The CEO saying, this is what we're going to do. Everybody get on board. This is a priority to me. This is a priority to my direct reports. We're going to figure this out.
Right.
So that's number one. That attitude
makes
of the
sense.
CEO being totally engaged. The second thing is the tool. That's the second T, is the tool. So everyone has Copilot, but no one uses Copilot because Copilot, for a number of reasons, is very frustrating. It might be good for maybe Excel or some other things, but overall, as a productivity tool, it's more frustrating than it is helpful in terms of my experience. So they need to decide as a company, what is the tool they're going to use?
Are you suggesting one tool, or because I want to talk about that later?
I'm suggesting one tool. Yeah, I'm suggesting they pick one tool. And if it is going to be Copilot, fine. But they need to say, they can't say, okay, you do Copilot, you do ChatGPT, you do Claude. They need to say, this is the tool we're going to use, and they get their business license or their enterprise license.
So as a company,
they need to do that. And so that is the second T. The third T is training. So, like just right now, everyone's got Copilot. No one really knows how to use Copilot. So, the training can be so I just took another hotel group through what I feel is very, very basic. However, if you haven't been using this, they just kind of got on to one of these platforms and like, okay, this is how you write a prompt, and here's some advanced prompting. But also, like, they were getting on the ChatGPT, and I said, okay, skills is a new thing. You need to understand how to use skills. You need to understand, these custom GPTs. You need to understand these projects. You need to understand how you can now work together with this technology. So they need that kind of training. But the last T, I'll argue, is the hardest T. And I think that is the reason why a lot of literacy doesn't stick, why adoption ultimately fails. It's because it's time. The last T is time. You have to invest the time, because initially it's sort of like the concept of delegation. You have somebody that reports to you and you have work to do. You could do it so much faster yourself, or do you delegate it and train the person to do it, and then they can kind of do it on? Now, if it's a one-off, maybe you don't delegate it, but if it's a continual job, do you work and spend the time and train them and say, okay, this is how you do it. Here are the resources. This is giving feedback. But, initially when you start that whole delegation process, it could take you 2 to 3 times longer to do what you could do very quickly. That's the same thing with this AI. Instead of delegating to a person, you're delegating to a thing. But learning that process and learning how to use it and learning to make sure the output is better takes time. And people are like, I don't have the time to do that. I'm just going to do it the way I've always done it. And then ultimately they don't invest it, but it's like a curve. So you invest the time and then soon you save the time. But but you have to save the time, and that initial sort of struggle, people don't like the feeling of the struggle. But that feeling of struggle, that's what learning feels like. If you're not struggling, you're not learning. So that's
I
number one.
couldn't agree. I say this in class all the time, no risk, no reward. I mean, if we don't have these obstacles or these frustrations, how are we going to get in front of it and learn how to do it better and better each time?
Oh yeah,
Couldn't agree
100%.
more. But it's interesting, and I want to get to some of the other points that we were wanting to share today. But recently, I had the chance to speak in front of a couple of hotel companies also. One was hotel specific, one was more travel and hotel. It was sort of the industry. And I was surprised. Are you finding this? I was surprised at how few of the folks in the audiences were using the tools. I would have expected it to be so much more. And I don't know if you found it similarly. In the classroom, I'm actually encouraging the use of it, but not as a replacement for thinking, but as a tool to dig deeper. And when you dig deeper, that's what takes time. So we're using it in a way that we're trying to get to something very, very specific, and we keep feeding it multiple attempts. And then we literally go, "Ah, there it is. Voila, that's what we were looking to get." Are you finding that less and less people are or that not as many people are using it as you would have thought, or that people aren't taking the time to sort of dig it and use it as the tool that I think
I'll share with you a data point that was shared with me with a hotel management company that I feel is pretty AI forward.
Okay.
They got how many? They bought like 200, I think like in 20 ChatGPT business licenses, and they sent the invites out to everybody. Of those, only 180 people accepted them.
Out of how many?
Out of like 220. Only 180 people went and made the account, like to get onto the business thing. So there's that. I think that's weird, but that's not everybody just kind of signed up. They're paying for this thing, but people just didn't do that. And secondly, so then after you sign up, so active users, ChatGPT then has a data point called AWU, average weekly users. And then they train of those people, how many of those are really using it? So they come up with a number. And then there's a subchat of those average weekly users. They say, okay, how many chats are these people doing on average per week? So the average weekly users of like the 180 some odd people, I think it was like something like only 100. And of those 100 people, what do you think that the average weekly average number of chats are of the active users? What do you think that number would be?
I wouldn't even know. Just
think about yourself, like how often you use it.
I use it as a tool and a prompt. I don't know, 3 or 4 times a week, maybe more.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure. Was
Yeah,
that?
so they said that the average weekly number of chats of the people that use it, active users, about 25. It averages about 25 per week.
Okay.
Which I thought was low for me. I thought it was low. I thought that was low.
Okay.
But I mean that was the data for this AI forward company, where the CEO says this is what you need to do. I've worked with their finance team to kind of get on and use this technology. I've worked with their HR team to develop interesting tools and applications, and still, I'm just amazed.
I think it'll get fast. I think there'll be more and more over time. Interesting. I also read a Harvard Business Review article that was published in March of this year, and it was interesting because it said what they found were who were the sophisticated, they called it a sophisticated user of these tools. And they found that it was more the senior level folks in companies who were the sophisticated users who were using it more and using it as a tool as opposed to a replacement, when they had anticipated to find younger entrants into the workforce as the more active users, the more digitally native folks, and they were not the sophisticated users. And what they found was the sophisticated user was someone who actually goes to various platforms. I am someone who does do that. I'll use various platforms to see what the different outputs could be. And sometimes I'll even take sort of the best of what I like and what I know works from each one. So I am someone who just go sort of and play it in multiple fields there. But I thought that was an interesting report. But I can understand from a company standpoint, stick to one, get that business agreement. And I understand what you mean by that completely. So I think that report will show more and more activity as we go forward. There's no doubt.
I think so. And as you're talking, one of the things that's interesting, because you talk about the senior level people, what work feels like. Work feels different, because before, work was a lot of hands on keyboard, you're typing, you're going through, it's like almost like a physical process of doing that. Now work feels different because a lot of that sort of the toil, that stuff that's done is being done automatically.
Easier.
So you're more productive, but you don't feel like you're working. And it's really, really strange. And I think Stanford came out with a study about, they call it work intensification.
Okay. And what did they mean by that? What does that mean?
I think it was Stanford, I'm not sure. But they say, okay, like a lot of us talk about the prompting and being productive. But what comes next? That was the question they asked. Okay, so the people that are productive, what happens to them? What is their work like? Like, what's stage 2? And they call that work intensification, because they say work no longer feels like work. It's a chat that they seem to be working all day long. So they work longer because they're like at lunch, they could just have a chat, they on driving to work, at home, they could just do this. So they're working all the time. The other thing is that they can now go broader. So I'm a marketing guy, but well, there's sales over here and there's revenue over there. Well, I can do a little bit of this now, and I could do a little bit of that. So I start pushing out, but what that actually ends up happening is those people with those domain expertise now have to spend a little time looking at what the heck I'm doing to say whether that's right or not. So it's sort of like I'm doing a little bit more, but it has an impact of other people that are like, okay, let me take a look at this. So that's a little bit more work for them as well.
So that's interesting, because the concept of stay in your lane, which I never really liked that, because I thought if you could help in other areas, you should. But then are we creating more work? Is it unnecessary work, or are we creating new SOPs that become brand new SOPs? I think that's a whole other discussion. But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole now.
Because I was about to go deeper. I'm okay, I'll stop. I was going to talk about workflows. That's the future of work, is workflows.
Well, you talked about productivity, right? So this is where it's creating productivity. So how do we sort of take that AI, and rather than going down this rabbit hole and expanding into other areas, but where does it help the productivity? Because if people are working longer, that's not increasing productivity. So how would you define that, or how would you distinguish that?
All right. So I'll say that it's okay. I'll give an example.
Okay.
So when I went to college, I went with a typewriter. So before I would type, I would write it out. I'd keep writing on a piece of paper, and I would type once. All right. So that was it. I would write a lot by hand, and then I'd type it once. Then I got my computer at school. I'm like, okay, I just change one word print.
Yeah.
So
we don't
now
need white hat
I am
anymore. Yeah.
Exactly. So then I have multiple copies. But now it's sort of like with this AI. So each of this paper, I'm like, okay, do a paper from this angle. Now do it from that angle. Now do it from this angle. So the quality of the work increases, but getting it molded to exactly what you want, you may not necessarily, you can do a better quality job,
right?
But it just levels up. It just levels up. And the other thing I'll go back to, akin to the Hoover vacuum. So when the Hoover vacuum, you're like this one. When the Hoover vacuum cleaner came out, the guys are selling door to door, saying to the housewives, guess what it was? They said, this is going to save you so much time on housework. They would show them, it would suck up all the dirt. And they're like, oh my God, this is great. I am going to save so much time. But there's a data point that says the amount of time people spend on housework before the Hoover versus now is exactly the same. The difference is each time as you have these new tools, the expectation of cleanliness continues to rise. So it takes you more time to get to that level of cleanliness.
Right.
So
right.
The same thing with AI, I think.
Okay, I get that. Let's shift gears a little bit because it's still AI focused and now it's hospitality marketing focused, and it's circling back to where we started when I teach digital marketing, and we learned about SEO and now something called GenEO, generative AI engine optimization. And I've even used the term AEO, which is answer engine optimization. So tell us, Michael, how should hotels, restaurants, hospitality businesses, any business for that matter, think about their digital presence and their visibility in a world of AI search?
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good question. That's what I just wrote about in my book here.
Okay.
In Invisible.
Okay.
Can I say, what to do when AI erases your business? So the way to think about this is, so some people just say this is SEO plus, but it isn't. I think it's a whole new paradigm of understanding your presence, because if you just look at Google Analytics, which is how most hotels or businesses measure how well they're doing.
Right.
They're saying you drive traffic to your website, and then you can see how successful it is with the funnel of going through the various stages. Now, if you're being successful and visible in AI, you may see nothing on your website. You may have very little traffic to your website. So what's happening here? So to understand this, you need to is lots of different parts to this, because you still want to drive people to your website, but you don't really have that capability anymore. So what you have to do is create content, or make sure there's content out there that gets synthesized by the AI, that they talk about you, and hopefully you get a citation that will ultimately lead to your website. So you have SEO, but the SEO for this is, you think about it more technical SEO.
Okay.
So you think about, is it server-side rendering? Do you have minimal Java? Is it fast? Do you have schema?
So this is all on the back end of the site with the web.
This is the website. This is the website.
This is the
This
web
is
developers
your
needing
actual,
to pay attention to this.
your actual website. You need to have server-side rendering. You need to have minimal JavaScript. You need to have schema. And why those are important? Because you need to rethink the concept of what your website is. So now you have two audiences for your website. The first audience for your website are people, but the second audience are these AI crawlers. And the AI crawlers care about different things than what people care about. And they need to look at your data website and think of it more like a database. And so it needs to be able to answer questions. So that is where we get to the AEO part, the answer engine optimization. Is your website written in a way that if someone is typing a question somewhere, does your website answer this question? Like, will the AI even think to go to your site? So you need to think about, you write it in a way that answers questions, your content. And the other thing is the website, you can't be big. So like a lot of marketing is, you want to convey a feeling, you want to use these flowery words, you want blah, blah, blah. The AI doesn't get it. It just wants to know, here's a question, does this site answer that question?
Yeah.
So and then FAQs are very important.
Yep. I was just going to ask you about that.
these are all very, very important to be able to truly answer the questions that people have. So that's the AEO portion of it. But still, that's not enough, because when you look at the data of these AI answers that are synthesized, only about, say, 15, 20% of it comes from your website. So if it's only 15 or 20% of the answer information comes from your website, where is it coming from?
Right.
Well, it's coming from directories, and like hospitality comes from Expedia, TripAdvisor, Yelp, who knows it. And it's looking out there to answer the questions, and it's synthesizing all the stuff it has, and then it aggregates an answer.
Right.
So in this whole process, so that's the GEO. In fact, that you want to make sure how you are represented as a brand, as a business, is also what you can control on your site is also out there across, blogs and directories and magazines, and you're getting good PR and all this other stuff. Because the goal here for this, I call this whole thing just visibility. The goal is when people are typing to the prompt, which is what you said at the start of it, like people are typing and have a question.
Yep.
You will get maybe 5 to 6 business answers. And so if you're not one of those 5 to 6, I say that you're invisible, hence the book Invisible. Because it's very different from what happens with Google. In Google, you will get all the blue links, and then you get a page 2 and a page 3. You get the paid search, you get the meta search, you have all that stuff and then you can scroll and go to the next page or whatever. But with these AIs, with the chatbot answers, you get this 5 to 8, 5 to 6, whatever. And then typically what people do at this point is they start to kind of go through what I call an answer spiral, in which they start to filter out those 5 to 6 and get it down to like 2. But in that initial response, you want to be mentioned.
Yeah.
So that's like, or if you're not mentioned, you're invisible, but you want to be more than just mentioned. You want to be cited. You want to have a citation that's associated with your business, but you don't control what citation it picks. It may pick from your website, probably not. It may pick from Expedia or Booking or TripAdvisor or Reddit or something like that, but you do want a citation, but that's still not exactly what you want. You want more than that. And ultimately what you want is a recommendation. You want, because anyone who has used it, they know how persuasive and authoritative and how opinionated it is. You ask a question, they'll say, here's the answer. Sometimes it's a hallucinated answer, but here's the answer. And so you want to be that first answer. You want to be that recommendation. Like, I am looking to go to Paris and I am looking for a hotel to stay. I'm going with my family. Where should I go? Oh, you should go here. And then they'll say, but here are some other ones that might also be interesting to you.
Right.
So you want to be that one. So
let me, if I can, I want to summarize what you just shared, because there was a lot of great information there. So in order for our hospitality or any business, for our business to get found, our goal is to get into that Gen AI output when people are searching, so that we're part of the Gen AI output. And even more importantly, is the goal is to not just be mentioned, but to actually be cited as sort of the authoritative source, right? So how do we get there? And here's what I heard us just say, Michael, now is we need to make sure that our website, that the developer took care of things on the development side, so that we have a proper sitemap, we are less JavaScript, we have more descriptive words, right? The website has to be tight, and Google has to really rank it high. That's one. I'm going to put FAQs, and for those who need to know what those initials stand for, that's frequently asked questions. But we're recommending in my classes to businesses, have an FAQ page, and have those FAQs, have those questions pertain to the questions that people would use to search to find you, so that we are that customer solution. Come up with those questions. Why would we want to be found? That's the FAQs. And then finally, what I heard you also say is what we call in digital marketing classes, earned media. What are others saying about us? Whether it's influencers, review sites, listings, anywhere that we have a digital presence. What are others saying about us in hopes of boosting that SEO like 2.0 to GEO to AEO? So 3 tips, I guess, on that again is the website itself, FAQs, earned media, and our goal is to get in that Gen AI output and even further to get cited as one of those authoritative sources. That's what I heard you say. So I just wanted to make sure I summed that up properly.
No, that was a good summation. But so say you're doing all those things.
Okay.
You're doing great. How do you know? Because if nothing is going to your website, how do you know how the AI is picking you up? So in the book, I talk about this, but what you have to do is you have to imagine what are the prompts that people are using to find you. And then you need to have a schedule where you kind of take these prompts and you run them against the various platforms and see what are the results. What does it come back to? Because, and you want to do branded, but also non-branded, because you want to see if you show up in the non-branded.
Right.
And then you want to see, okay, well, am I showing up in this one, or is my competitor showing up? Am I showing up? Am I correct? And so you need to have a process, an SOP in terms of how do you do this, because you're not going to see this in Google Analytics unless you actually do something like this, and there are tools out there. I've developed a platform tool that does this. So there are various ways to do it. You can do it manually. It's a little process heavy, but there are ways to do this. But that's the way to kind of really understand where you are.
Okay, great. And then just as we wrap up now, do you have a recommendation or two for those of us in marketing when using AI? Is there a little secret, a little tip, a recommendation you have for marketers in hospitality? How to use the AI in a way to get us to do our job smarter?
To have you do the job smarter. All right. So I would
as
say,
opposed to what?
That's right. I find as I get smarter using this stuff, I get dumber. That's what I don't want
anyone happening. So it's interesting because I tell students and I tell folks where I speak, we still need to stay smart. I don't want this AI tool to replace our brain cells. We need to be smart enough to have the critical thinking skills and the strategic thinking skills to create the right prompt to get the right output for whatever the challenge is that we have in front of us.
Yeah, but the thing is the prompts are now shifting to agents. So prompts are reactive, but these agents are proactive and goal-oriented. So for example, I can do in ChatGPT, I am working on a presentation. Can you help me come up with the outline? Here's all the sources I'm using. I'll do that. Now, and I can go to an agent. I say, okay, use my skill for PowerPoint writing, use my skill on my colors, use my skill on this, follow this template. I want you to put it all together for me. And I want it to be 100 slides, and I need to have speaker notes, and it needs to be timed like this, and just do it for me. And then I'll go grab some coffee, and then there's my presentation.
So it's become the AI assistant.
It has become the true AI assistant.
Yes.
And, it's sort of like, but, you haven't done, when I first learned about AI, it's sort of like they talked about where it has the biggest impact. So like typically when you're doing work, the drafting takes the most amount of time. And then the wrap up takes the least amount of time. Now it's flipped. Now the drafting takes no time. But now I'm cleaning it up. And I'm like, okay, no, not this, not that, blah, blah, blah. And the finalization, that's the sort of like, okay, now that doesn't make sense. No, I totally misunderstood that. So it's the finalization piece that takes more time. But I would say
And that's where your thinking skills do have to come in, by the way. You can't be
Yeah,
done
yeah,
without
yeah.
that.
Oh,
'Cause that's
yeah.
where we still
No,
have to think, right?
no, 100%,
Yeah.
100%. But I would say in terms of the best way, in terms of what you're asking, the tips.
Yep. Yep.
The tip is to whatever work you're doing, always assume it can do more than what you think it can do, and just try to use the AI to solve it. Maybe it doesn't, maybe it doesn't, but you've tried it, then go on. And every day, everything that you do, see if it can, and understand where it's weak and where it's strong, because every day it gets better. So there's like Copilot I had like this learned helplessness experience with Copilot. When Copilot first came out, I'd ask it to do something. I can't do that. Can you do this? I can't do that. Can you do this? I can't do that. I'm like, oh, I can't do anything. But the thing is, I am sure that Copilot can do that now.
Right.
But
So
I had such a negative initial experience, or with any AI, if you ask it to do something, I can't do that. People just assume, well, AIs can't do that. That's not the case. The worst AI is only as bad as it's going to be now. It's only going to get better.
So what I'm hearing is use it. Just play with it, experiment, and keep using it. Michael, thank you, because you're always inspiring us and me for sure to keep using it. You have, because I feel much more comfortable using it in ways that I have of late. Again, not to replace my thinking, but I've been using it as a tool. But the fact that it can do this agentic work and behave as a thinker, we just need to make sure that we stay smart too, and that we look at it. Michael, thanks for this conversation. I know we're going to do this again, because my guess is in a few months' time, there's something else to talk about that we're not even thinking about today when it comes to these applications.
For sure. For sure.
Michael, thanks so much.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Marketing Mindset, Lessons from Hospitality. Marketing Mindset is a production of Think Tank Media and the Hospitality Nexus, the global platform for hospitality education, with resources such as podcasts, articles, and video tutorials. I'm your host, Leora Lanz, and if you want to learn more about how we can work together, visit my LinkedIn at Leora Halpern Lanz. Remember to order a copy of my debut book, the international bestseller, Developing Your Marketing Mindset, Real-World Lessons from Hospitality, which also won the Business Book of 2025 award from the New England Book Festival. And the newest in the series, the companion book, Marketing Mindset in Motion, inspired by hospitality. Everything you need to think like a marketer for your business, your service, or yourself. Connect with meaning through wellness, sustainability, and community to market with meaning and remember the hospitality. Until next time.